If you're a beginner looking to skyrocket your photography, I've got 10 powerful tips here for you today. Let's get into it. One of the first things you learn as a beginner photographer is how to properly expose your images, which in plain sight means having lots of detail in your shadows, mids and highlights without any areas of the image being under or overexposed. However, that does not mean that deliberately under or overexposing your images as a creative choice is incorrect. Many incredible photographers out there choose to have no detail in the shadows or highlights in order to hide ugly portions of the image, portray a certain feeling, or allow the viewer to focus straight in on the point of the photograph. So while learning how to correctly expose your images is still the part of photography I would recommend learning first, once you've got that down to a T, knowing when, where and what parts of your images to under or overexpose for creative reasons is the part of photography that I think will push your personal style forward the most. Okay, next up we've got checking your edges and paying a lot of attention to detail to the areas of the frame that people may think aren't as significant as the subject itself. There's nothing worse than seeing a beautiful photograph and it's all been executed really well, but as your eyes start to wander around the frame and pick up other details, you're drawn to the corners or the side where there's distracting elements. Treating your edges of the frame with as much consideration as the center portion of your image, in my opinion, is just as important. And normally it's a really simple thing to do. It might just be a little step to the left or right or forwards or backwards while you're out taking the photograph, or it could be a case of a quick clone stamp or a spot heal in post-production to get them corners, sides, edges all nice and tidy. This attention to detail is what takes your photographs to the next level. Editing and post-processing is obviously a really important part of the photography workflow, and if you're anything like myself, you may find that you progress in your editing skills way faster than you do your ability behind the actual camera and the photographic side of things. Now, of course, there's nothing wrong with becoming a master editor, but if photography is your goal, then the problem with becoming incredible at editing and not so good at the actual photographic side of things is that a bad photo that's well edited is still a bad photo, but a good photo that's well edited is a great photo. Don't fall into the trap I did as a beginner in the first few years, probably even longer than that, where I wouldn't really care about the results of the raw files coming out of my camera because I would always say to myself while I was out on location, it's fine because I'm a really good editor, so whatever happens I can just save it in post. Remember, there's a fine line between editing a photo really tastefully in order to elevate that photograph and completely faking an image because your skills behind the camera are lacking. As a beginner, you may be really eager to go ahead and purchase a load of your favorite photographer's presets or a bunch of assets off a photography website in order for a quick fix to bring your photographs up a notch. While there's nothing wrong with using presets as a nice starting point for your photographs or even just buying them in order to support your favorite creators, in my opinion, there's no point purchasing them unless you already have a really good working knowledge of how to edit photos from scratch in the first place. Presets, while often marketed as a one-click fix, they're just simply not. They're often a starting point that you slap on your photo and they still need tweaking and adjusting in order to bring it to the correct exposure and the desired look that you want. So if you are a beginner that's not that great at editing currently, rather than buying a bunch of presets to try and eliminate the fact that you're not that great of an editor yet, I would say that your money is much better well spent on an editing course, or not wanting to spend any money, your time is much better well spent watching as many editing tutorials that are on YouTube for free as you can. Assuming you're not a millionaire that can buy every single piece of equipment under the sun until you find something you're happy with, before purchasing a new camera, lens or any piece of photography equipment, I highly recommend trying to try it before you buy it. Now you may be thinking, how on earth can I try it before I buy it? Well, most big camera stores out there will allow you to go into the shop and give the equipment a try while you're in there. You can take your own memory card, take some test shots, bring them home, have a little peep at the raw files. If it's a piece of equipment like a tripod or a lens, you can check out the build of it, how it feels in your hand, and that's a really good way of getting a better insight of whether that's going to be a good investment for you. There are also websites out there where you can rent camera gear for a little period of time if you wanted to go out in the field and use it before dropping a lot of money on it. Fat Llama, for example, is a website I've used before to try out lenses for a whole weekend, and just getting that hands-on time with it is probably one of the most valuable things you can do before spending your hard-earned money. Still on the topic of camera gear then, I wanted to touch on 3 particular items today that I recommend you do not cheap out on. These are filters, tripods, and camera straps. Cheap filters, for example, while not everybody wants to spend an arm and a leg on a bit of glass that you screw onto the front of your camera, if you do buy a really cheap knockoff filter from Amazon, then the problem with them is the color cast and the coating on them is going to be so bad that the images that you take with that filter are probably going to be unusable anyway. As for tripods, camera straps, and anything that's actually going to be holding or supporting your gear, think about it logically. Those items are probably holding your most expensive possession outside of your car and house. And I do think sometimes, and this goes for all equipment, all camera gear, that you need to look at those price points and ask, why is something so expensive and why is something so cheap? Because oftentimes the piece of equipment you want to go for is in the middle. The one that sits in the middle when it comes to price point is probably going to be just as good as the ones that are marketed just for the brand. The ones that sit at the very bottom are probably going to fall apart, fall over in the wind, and be a danger to you and your camera gear. We're often disheartened and quick to delete our failed photo shoots and move on to the next thing. But instead of just deleting them and wiping them from your memory, this is actually the biggest opportunity for us to learn and improve our photography. I've spoken about this in a full video in the past, but I feel it's so valuable I want to talk about it again. What I do when I go out on a photo shoot and I come back and I feel that it's a bit of a failure and I don't want to do anything with those photographs, instead of deleting them, I stick them in a folder, just a couple of raw images from that day. That folder of mine is called Revisits, but of course you can call yours whatever you want. Jumping in that folder from time to time to remind myself of locations I've not yet done justice, almost like a little checklist or challenge with myself to make sure I remember to go back there and get better results and then tick it off as a location that I've photographed really well. Secondly, I'll use this photo to identify weak points in my photography and try and pick out patterns that might be arising that are causing these particular photos to not be very good over a period of time. So storing your failures rather than deleting them straight away is a very, very powerful way to learn and improve upon your images. Speaking of folders full of images, I think that correctly archiving your photographs is something that gets taken for granted by beginner photographers, or maybe all photographers to be honest. But anyway, you want to come up with your own system that works really well for you when it comes to storing your photographs on your computer and inside your editing program. This helps you find certain photo shoots really fast, keep a clear state of mind while inside your editing program, and also you're going to save yourself the time of doing it later down the line when you've mounted thousands of photographs and then you feel that you need to start sorting them out. If you start sorting them out really nicely as a beginner and carry that through for the rest of your journey, it's going to save you a lot of time and panic in the future. For as long as I can remember, I've stored all my raw files in year, month, and photo shoot, and my Lightroom catalog then replicates that particular layout. This allows me, when I sit down for an editing session, to jump into one of those folders and really focus in and get the most productivity out of my editing session that I can possible. Even smaller and simpler still, but keeping a list or pinning the locations that not only you desire to photograph, but ones you've photographed before as well, is a huge pro when it comes to your photography workflow. Again, it's going to save you time when you're thinking and looking for somewhere to photograph, but also maybe you visit a location on a particular day and it's not going to plan. You can pull up that list and find somewhere nearby that's been on your radar and head there instead and try and still make the most of the day. I'm currently pinning locations straight into Google Maps. I find this incredibly helpful because not only do I pin the location, but I'll also pin anything else that's relevant to the shoot, like car parking or vantage points, or even the exact scene that I want to take a photo of. Visually seeing pins closer together can allow you to map out an entire photography route for the day. I actually spend an hour or two every single week just looking on Google Maps, scouring the web, and pinning places that might be of any interest to me. And even if I don't have time to research it right there and then, at least I've got a list to come back to when I'm struggling for somewhere new to go. I think this technique alone has been one of the biggest reasons I've managed to stay so consistent getting out and photographing somewhere new every single week over the last couple of years. Okay, last but not least, the longer you do photography, the harder it can become to stay motivated and continue pushing yourself to get out and strive and improve. Setting yourself a personal photography project can be a perfect way to make sure you continue doing this. It could be for a full year or it could just be for the month, but honestly, the value you'll get out of setting yourself a personal photography project is outrageous. I have a few running at the moment. 15 photos, one location is currently my favorite. If you've watched my channel for a while, I'm sure you're familiar with it. I also did a really successful one a few years ago where I told myself in January, in the new year, that I was going to go out and take 2 photo sets per month for the entire year and then post them on a web page. And that might seem really simple, but I actually owe my current style of photography to that challenge, because by the end of the year, having done 2 photo sets a month, I look back on that web page and there was certain things I could pull out from the photo sets where I was like, yep, that's the exact direction that I want to go in with my photography. You can make it as simple or as complex as you want. It could be something just like 30 days of black and white photography or 30 days of street photography, or it could be something with a bit more bulk to it, like creating a photo book for a month or the entire year. Either way, I promise you with my whole heart that setting yourself a personal photography project will do nothing but good things for your art. And if you do like that last one, I've got a video coming out soon that's going to be a bunch of personal photography projects that you could set yourself for the year ahead, or at any time really. If you want to dive straight into some more photography advice, check out this video here next. That's going to be it from me in this one. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, I'll see you in the next one.